Oh, okay. All right, there we go. Refamiliarizing myself with StreamYard. Okay. All right. Now I'm live. Um Doing God's Work episode 1.5. The reason why it's episode 1.5 is because I originally had episode 1 scheduled for last Thursday night, but I fell asleep early in the evening and I ended up sleeping, waking up. I did the classic thing where I go to work, I go into the office 1 day a week. And that is enough to drain all of my energy where when I get home all I want to do is just pass out. I don't know why I thought it was a great idea to schedule a live stream for a Thursday night, but I don't know, it just seemed logical at the time. So I get home and I do the classic, and everyone's guilty of this, where I'm like, "Oh, I'm just going to rest my eyes for 15 minutes. Just relax, staring at a monitor all day, just relax my eyes." And then sure enough, I wake up 4.5 hours later, kind of just confused, don't really know what's going on. All the lights are on. The cat is crying because I didn't feed him. I mean, and I, so I missed the stream. I apologize for anyone who tuned in and they were sitting there patiently waiting for me to just like show up on the live stream. I yeah. And then that Saturday we ended up doing an impromptu BS stream, but under the title of the original Thursday stream. And it was completely off topic. But the topic for the stream tonight is something that I really want to cover. And it's something that in the collecting community, I really want people to start talking about. And that is the sealed OG scam. I have been buying physical media since the 90s, and I still have a lot of stuff that I've bought over the years. And for a long time, I was ignorant of what a bootleg was, or a boot versus counterfeit versus gray market and all of that. And there's in the music, CD, vinyl collecting community, there's always discussion about bootlegs and all that. But the one thing that no one has ever talked about is the sealed OG scam. So we're going to talk about that. And then also at the end of the stream, I am going to crack open a sealed Megadeth Killing Is My Business 1986 Combat Records press. This is according to the catalog, this is an 86, a CD first press. When CDs first started being CDs started being sold to the public in, I think 86 is when CDs first started to hit the market in North America. So that's what this is. And we're going to crack this open. I feel like it's time. I'm tired of this idea that because something is sealed, then its value is just worth 50 times more than what it would be. I think that over time, it's good to open something up. Especially with vinyl. I think with records, like especially with records that have been sealed for a long time. I've had some where the shrink wrap has started to like really kind of get really tight, and then it starts to, warp the record. And then also the inner sleeves too, those cheap paper sleeves. And I have a story about that. But those cheap paper sleeves that it sits in and all of that, I think that this idea of something being sealed and that makes its value skyrocket, I think it's a lot of BS. And since I've really since 2020 really is when, COVID, when the collecting thing started, is when, when the collecting thing got really big, is when now I started to kind of really be aware of sort of scammers that are out there. And so I'm gonna call out what I think is one of the biggest undiscussed scams out there, and that is the sealed OG scam. So before I do that, I want to say hi to some people in the chat and thank everyone for tuning in on a Thursday night. Uh Wilson, good to see you, man. Hold on here. Let me yeah, here we go. Wilson, awesome to see you, man. Wilson was visiting Chicago and we hung out and we got deep dish pizza at Giordano's. So that was pretty awesome. And he still owes me money for that too, by the way. Just joking. It was my treat. Alaskan Berg Wanderer. Yeah. Tyler, it was good meeting you the other night. Good. I've never met. I did meet an Alaskan before when I lived in New York. I did meet an Alaskan, but he was like an Anchorage Alaskan. And so after talking to you, I learned that rural Alaskans are different from. Uh, does Alaska even have like an urban, anything urban? I just picture it being just kind of like the type of setting where there's like a snowbank and um kind of like the single road with like the one stoplight that's not even a real stoplight, it's just the red that blinks. I, that's what I kind of see that part being like. I'm probably completely wrong about that, but correct me, please correct me. Earache my eye, bootlegs are getting better these days, not like the ones in the 90s. Yeah, boots are getting convincing. And you know what the thing is I qualify myself as someone who can authenticate a bootleg. And this is because I've worked in print design. I understand the manufacturing process, and I also used to do art reproduction a long time ago. So it's like when especially doing art reproduction, you you know what to look for. I have some obvious boots that I've found over the years where I can tell it's boots are definitely getting better, but I can go out another time on a future episode of Doing God's Work. I'm going to talk about how you can critique a boot from an authentic pressing because I mean CDs, vinyls, they're getting more creative. They can fake a matrix number or an inner groove. They can fake all that, but a lot of it really comes down to the album artwork. So in a future episode, I'm going to talk about how you can scrutinize the detail of album art to really tell if it's authentic or if it's boot. Um, yeah. Well, you know what, Wilson? I might let a little bit of steam out of your there with the seals. I have plenty of sealed ones too. Yeah. Oh, concert buddy. Good to see you in the chat, man. Thank you for tuning in. I enjoy your channel a lot. Who do we have here? Tom. Giordano's stuffed has the most cheese ever of anything. It does. Good Lord. You want to talk about cheese? Like, especially as we get older, the next morning can be dangerous. And everyone knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, just make sure you have plenty of ventilation in the bathroom. After a hefty serving of Giordano's, it is good. I've since I've lived in Chicago, I've been big into piquads. The really deep dish casserole stuff. I'm kind of just not really into that. I kind of like the kind of just the piquads, and then also tavern style is what the true Chicagoans say everyone eats. But I could eat, and I have. Pizza's pizza. I could eat a 95-cent slice of frozen, like those Mama Celeste or whatever that are like 95 cents that you could get in the freezer. With that weird silver reflective tray under it. I've eaten those things and I think it's great because it's still pizza, but yeah, there's a there's a definite difference. Alaskan says, now you're describing Palmer. You know what? I'm going to say you're talking about Robert Palmer. And I am always up for a Robert Palmer discussion because I love Robert Palmer. And I think one of the most underrated, undervalued male vocalists of the 70s, 80s, especially the 80s. That's the stuff I really like. I am a big Robert Palmer fan. Rick is in the chat. Nice seeing you here, man. You don't have Venmo? Well, see, Wilson is a Canadian, and I don't know if they have Venmo in Canada or if yeah, it's yeah, that's the thing too. Wilson's in Canada. So it's yeah. I don't know if Canadians, they might have their own thing up there. Yeah, Boots. All right. Okay, who do we have here? Brian. Brian's in the chat. Time to party. Oh yeah. Oh, this discussion we're going to have about shrink wrap. Ooh. Yeah, oh my god, people are going to love this one, man. Only a diehard collector would want to sit through a discussion about shrink wrap, but it's a very important discussion and I want more people to start talking about this because a lot of it is a load of bullshit. All right. So, yeah, okay, yeah. All right. So, what I'm my thing with shrink wrap and sealed OGs is that there is a scam in the collecting community where scammers reseal records. They reseal records, they reseal CDs, and then they sell it on Discogs or on eBay and they put sealed or they'll put sealed OG. And you think like, oh, it's sealed. Oh, that's awesome. There are a lot of bullshit scammers out there who reseal stuff. And it is easier to reseal something than you would think. It's something that a lot of people just kind of just don't think about, like how to shrink wrap something. But so there are different types of shrink wrap. And this is where things get kind of like, this is where the diehard collectors are really, their ears are perking up. They're like, ooh, tell me more. I want to learn more about shrink wrap. There's factory sealed and then there's aftermarket resealed. No one ever posts anything as being aftermarket resealed, but there was a time in collecting, and I remember as a kid where, like people would sell used when the whole like reselling used CDs, records in the 90s started to become a thing. There were stores that would just reseal stuff when it came in as like security, to keep people from stealing stuff. And just no one ever thought anything about it because back then no one thought of as a CD as being collectible. It was just something you buy, you listen to, and um no one would have ever have thought that, oh, Discogs, that years later people would pay $80 for a sealed Megadeth album. It was just part of the thing where someone turned, traded in some used CDs to a store, and they took them, gave them store credit, and then store went, okay, it's not scratched, and then they reseal it. And I also too, one thing that was common for a lot of times too is that people who would run indie labels or like a DIY label out of their house, the thought was that, okay, sometimes with records or CDs, okay, so the record jackets come from one place, the records come from another place, then you assemble everything in your house and then you seal it because there was always the thought that, well, it needs to be sealed. Nowadays, indie labels aren't sealing stuff. They're a lot of it is just they're putting it in a sleeve, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't need anything to be shrink wrapped. But there is a difference in the type of shrink wrap that's used. And this is where things get really hot and steamy now, really getting into, different types of shrink wrap. So this is common for something that's factory sealed. And this is today is the day. Heavy Metallurgy just discussed this album a week or two ago. Excellent album. You're probably wondering, why haven't you listened to it? Well, it's because I have two copies. I have the first press and then the repress. And so, yeah, so this one has always been sealed. But the thing is with factory seal is it folds over, and you can't do this in your house. So this is a way that you know that, okay, this is factory sealed. And with a record, there are different ways to seal a record. Like, this is what's common with better quality pressings, is it's in a looser bag. Like, this is God, Earache put this out ages ago, and I've never opened it, but Southern Lord pressings, Mobile Fidelity pressings, a lot of audiophile pressings, they use this type of bag. Or it's not bag, but it's just loose, and you can tear the top off. And which is good for vinyl, because you really shouldn't have heat along the edge of the record. It's really not good for the record. I mean, it's probably on a microscopic level not good, but still, this is something that it's still factory sealed, but it's the loose fitting seal that you should see with a record. Now, what's common with factory sealed shrink wrap is the wraparound. So where the seam, you can see the seam right here, and this is from the machining. The machines, it's finishing is probably what they call it. The industry I worked in one time, it was called finishing, really, where things would go through the whole shrink wrap phase. But it's common if you see a seam like this where it's outside of the edge, then that's something where you can tell, like, okay, this is factory sealed. This is also Decibel. This is interesting. Decibel Records, or no, Decibel, the magazine, in 2012, they put out a comp that was 1 penny that you could buy. Yeah, some good stuff on here, definitely. Pig Destroyer, Marduk, Pathology. Good comp. 1 penny is all that it costs, too. And then for a record, this is one that I believe was sealed in someone's house, because not as fraudulent, but this is Circle of Dead Children from Willow Tip. But this is also, I've had this for ages. I remember when I bought it years and years ago. It's just, at the time when I got this, Willow Tip was a pretty small label, at the time too. And this is one thing where you can tell about something, where if it's sealed in-house, like someone sealing it themselves, the seam is almost always just right along the edge, because that's how just the heat shrink equipment that you use. It does kind of creep over here, but it's going to, because you fold the shrink wrap over. You have a heat gun that goes along the edge, and then you trim the edges, but then it's still gonna, creep up. But also, another thing too, that's kind of a giveaway that this was shrink, sort of aftermarket shrink, is what I've noticed is that, I don't know if you can see it here, but you see these little holes. From my experience, that's something that is common with something that is a DIY shrink job, and not factory assembly shrink wrap. And so then we're going to look at a couple of CDs. I know that we have some comments here about I hate when sealed OGs and they overcharge. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's especially nowadays, especially since, and this is part of what doing God's work is about, is some of the scammers out there. Scamming has just skyrocketed since collecting has gotten big, especially since 2020, and people are obsessed with vinyl. There are so many scammers out there on eBay, Discogs, and I think it's time to kind of like just really be like, okay, this is BS, because a lot of it too is affecting anyone who's buying stuff, because ultimately the bottom line is cost, and these scammers are affecting the cost of, you know, music. Long boxes. Yeah, okay, so long boxes. Here's one thing I remember back in the day when long boxes were a thing. Like, they were real, they were a utility, they were necessary. But then when CD stores would get in used stuff, they would shrink wrap the CD, and then they had these plastic, um not, it wasn't a long box, but it was just like a plastic container that they would put the CD in, so that way it would still, you know, fit in the display rack. Um, yeah, and yeah, long boxes, man. I'd love to. I love CDs. I would love to see long boxes make like a real comeback. Nowadays, you'll kind of see it, but it's like a novelty with, like, you know, the corporate labels, like, you know, Metal Blade or whoever, the corporate labels, they'll have like a special long box edition you can buy for an extra $10. You know, like, no, I want the real deal. Tom say we used to shrink wrap used DVDs at the video store I worked at for protection. Yeah, exactly. You can go on eBay and buy a heat gun and a shrink wrap machine. And here's the thing too. The shrink wrap is different. So, looking at a couple CDs here. This is the one where I you know, it's, you could tell there's a little more, you know, where the flaps fold over. You couldn't do this in your house. This is machine sealed. Um, Now here's something that you can tell was sealed with a heat gun, and this is nausea demos. Now this isn't like fraud, like someone didn't seal this just to like get an extra $5 on it. It's just, this is, you know, fuck off and die records. This is a dude running a record label, you know, out of his apartment, and so he's sealing these things himself with a heat gun and with shrink wrap. One thing I've noticed, that with shrink wrap that's used to seal aftermarket items, there's a pattern how something is sealed. Again, one thing that's consistent with this, the seam along the edges, um, but then also on the back, you can see right here where it overlaps, because you would lay it down in like this thing, and then you fold the shrink wrap over, and then you take the heat gun and you seal the edges. And then also you can see too how the top of this, it's kind of frayed. That's because this is where the heat shrink, the heat gun, where it would melt together, and then you would, there was probably like a trimmer that you would use to trim the edges off, to trim the extra shrink wrap off of the edges. Years ago, a buddy of mine ran an underground label, and I helped him shrink wrap some stuff. And so that's how those things work. Some other types of shrink wrap too. This is something that's looser, and these are God, I can't, maybe 5 years ago when Relapse would have their on like Black Friday or whatever, they would have their like 30 CDs for $30. I bought one of those, and I've opened like 5 of them since then. So I still have these ones that are still sealed. But the shrink wrap is different. If you can tell, this is looser, and the reason why is because it has the hype sticker on it. So if it was a tighter shrink wrap, then you run the risk of the sticker tearing the shrink wrap in, when it's going through the assembly line. This is heat shrink sealed, but that's because it has the OB, or the I call it an OB, but everyone knows relapse. They put these things on here. This is heat shrink. I don't believe that it's manually. I don't believe that a person did this, though, because it's too clean. Like the edges, it's machine sealed heat shrink, but it's not like uh, a manual job like that someone did themselves. Um, Now going to, okay, so here's another example. This one, Sepultura, this Beneath the Remains reissue that came out. This is another example of what factory sealed shrink wrap would look like. Is where you see the edge hanging over, like right here. This is what's common of, you know, how things work in, going through the assembly line when they're sealed. What I think of is, for this Megadeth, and the reason why I'm opening it on stream tonight. Well, first of all, I want to open it and listen to it because it's a good album. I don't believe that this is factory sealed. I completely believe that was resealed at some point, and I bought it because it said it was sealed, and the seller had it of, like, that it's, yeah, shit, yeah, it's sealed. Nothing stipulating that it's not factory sealed, but then maybe the seller didn't know that either. So we'll talk about this in a minute. What do we have here? Concert Buddy, great topic. Not a lot are well versed in types of shrink. Yeah, yeah, and the thing too that I noticed. I wish I had agoraphobic nosebleed honky reduction sealed, and it was an OG sealed, but it was, again, dude running a small label in his house, used the heat gun to seal it. But the type of shrink wrap that you use with a heat gun, it's tougher, and it's makes a louder sound. Like, if you were to kind of like crinkle it, it sounds more plastic. And I imagine that a lot of that has to do with the tolerance of the heat gun, because there's human error that could come into play of using the heat gun, and something sturdy that can, that's not going to break all the time, because then that means that your product is flawed. But shrink wrap on an assembly line, when they're sealing the product, is specced out for the machining and the tolerance level, the tolerance, because there's a level of tolerance for when it wraps and it seals the product. My experience was not dealing with, but learning about how books and magazines were sealed, and the finishing equipment. If there was a magazine, but then there was some promo items that would go inside of the magazine, then there were different levels of tolerance to keep from either from keeping the product from warping, and to accommodate for you know some extra stuff that would go inside of the magazine. So that's what I forgot where I was going with that. But again, we're already 30 minutes in, and it has been some hot and steamy shrink wrap talk going on tonight. Yeah, it really is. Shrink plastic toolkit. Yeah, it really is. It's the assembly line shrink wrap versus the DIY shrink wrap. They're two different types. Um, the problem is much worse in VH selling. People will resell a worthless tape and ask, "Yeah, I believe it." Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, and that's part of what makes me glad to see that a lot of, at least with underground labels, that they're not even shrink wrapping stuff anymore, because it removes that whole, like, oh, it's a sealed OG, so it's worth $80 more. No, that's bullshit. Some labels plants can be very cheap in their shrink wrap work and material. Yeah, there are. There are. Um, Logan, finally the rant we deserve to hear. Amen. Amen. I'm doing God's work here. Um, so oh wait, here meth drinker fanboy pulls out the toad liquor. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 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 So for the Megadeth, here's the thing about this. I believe that this is resealed. I don't believe that it's factory sealed, but it's been resealed for a really long time. So when it was originally resealed, it wasn't as like a scammer trying to get a lot of money. It was just part of the someone sold some used CDs, and so they would just shrink wrap it. And part of it is on the back too. There's this sticker, Series 598, and it was for $3.99. So that right there tells you, yeah, it's been sealed for a really long time. That neon Pantone, those things hold up pretty well over time, and it's pretty faded and dirty. And this is probably something that came from, I remember, ages ago, like buyers would, buy like a lot, like not like a lot, but just like in bulk purchase used used CDs and then sell them at flea markets, things like that. And that's probably where this ended up at some point was, in a flea market or something to sell it for $3.99. Clearly that was, or to market for that price, this has probably been sealed for like 30 years or so. I believe it's an authentic pressing, but I don't at all believe that it's factory sealed. And another thing too that is a little bit of a giveaway is that with the jewel case, I have yeah, this is how good I am at authenticating stuff. I have two I also have a loop too, that I can look at things. You remember CD jewel cases? There were two different types where the lid, the cover, would have those little, like those two things right there to hold the booklet in, which was common. But then there were also the type that would just have the two little, kind of like raised dots to hold the booklet in. This has a very fine indents along the edges of where the dots would have held the booklet into, in place. But right here you can see it's clearly it has the those other things that to hold the booklet in place. Um so let's see what we got going on here. I'm about ready to crack this open. How about I'm waiting to open this up and then find out that it's not even a Megadeth CD in here. And oh yeah, so that reminds me too, about when I started thinking about fraudulent sealed records is a while back, and I can't remember the record, but I bought a sealed record on Discogs. And I got it, and it was an old one. And when I opened up the seal, I was like, okay, it had that kind of like rough edge along, this, the edge of it. And I didn't really think much of it. But when I opened up the record and took the record out, it was the record paper sleeve, but it didn't have the static buildup that we're all used to with like a new record. And usually the cheap paper sleeve, there's always that static. It didn't have the static buildup. And it had indents on the sleeve of, but that could have also have just been, the person in the factory putting it in. But the fact that the static was missing really made me question. It was like, okay, something doesn't feel right about this, And so add into the awesome topics tonight of shrink wrap, but then also static. where where can we take this discussion next? Of conversations that only the most diehard collectors would find interesting. I see something right here. No way that Megadeth CD would have been sold for $5.99 back in the day. Not to mention West Germany, Japan. Yeah. Well, this North America in 1986, there were North American pressings, or at least they were sold distributed in North America. Maybe where the pressing was. Well, I remember back in the day when this was nobody was buying this. And this is kind of going back to the 90s when CD stores were, at the peak in like the late 80s, early 90s. I remember these things were everywhere and nobody was buying them. They were always in the discount bins. Um and yeah, I'm pretty happy to have this, but I'm ready to start listening to it. So that's why I'm ready to open it up. Um Hopefully it's a Megadeth CD in there and you come proud over Linkin Park. I know, right? Um, okay, so here is a little, we talk about scamming. So I'm not going to say that I did this, but I'm not also not going to say that I did this. But my buddy who had the shrink wrap machine, maybe someone bought some video games at the time that were pretty expensive, took the games out of the packaging, but then put a blank CDR in the case, resealed it, and then returned it to Walmart for a full refund. Not saying that I did that, but I'm also not saying that I did that. You know what I'm talking about. This is akin to the episode of Geraldo where he opened Al Capone's vault. Yeah, Al Capone's vault that had nothing in it. Um, all right, so anyways, yeah, we got 10 people watching. Everyone, why don't you give the stream a thumbs up? I'm cracking open, and you know what? I have another sealed OG that I might open as well, and this is Gorguts, Erosion of Sanity. Um, yeah, right here. This is sealed, and this is. I'm pretty sure that this is factory sealed, but it requires some closer. Well, no, I don't know. It's a good if someone did reseal this one, they did a good job with it. Um it doesn't look like it was a heat gun seal. Maybe I might open this one too, or might save this for another time to open it. But we're definitely opening the Megadeth 1986 Combat Press tonight, live on air. So yeah, anyone, yeah, give the stream a thumbs up for opening the Combat Press tonight. Logan was people let themselves get scammed. If it's too good to be true, it is. It is true. If it's too good to be true, then it is too good to be true. And it's yeah, I've fallen into that trap before. Um, everyone has, but it seems like there's a lot more of it going on now. Just over the past few years, it's like, I've been buying physical media for so long. It's like I can read between the lines, and Discogs, a lot of it is to blame for a lot of it. Yeah, yeah. Um, Sometimes you can't determine if it's resaled or not, in my opinion. Yeah, it really comes down to, and I'm only talking about CDs. With records, it's trickier, or like even with records, if you want to go into like box sets, like this one. So a box set, I mean, this I bought this from the label. It's definitely not resealed. It's this is just a, but the sealing of it gets to be a little trickier with these things. I'm just skeptical of, and for a newer pressing that's sealed, that's not a big deal. It's like, okay, it's sealed, no big deal. But it's when it's a pressing that's like 30, 40 years old. This is when I really start to question, okay, is it truly factory sealed, or is there a scammer who is going in and just resealing stuff and then selling it for a shitload of money, because it's it's really easy to just find like a good quality pressing, and then because someone could say like, well, yeah, it's sealed. That's how I got it. I got it sealed. I don't know what the last person did. Um, anyways, I'm ready to crack this baby open. And then I'm going to listen to it. By the way, I love the album artwork. This has always been my favorite album cover, Megadeth. I mean, yeah, the other stuff, it's classic. I've always liked the album cover for So Far So Good, So What. But this one, it's the best. I love it how it just has that point and shoot look to it, and just the corny prop and everything. It's nice. Things about this that make me believe that it's not factory sealed. And again, 1986. I don't know what was going on in the 80s when they were sealing stuff. I never paid attention to that. But the seam isn't even, it's kind of wavy, which would be consistent with something sealed with a heat gun. And the edges are kind of sharp, and there aren't any flaps that fold over, like with this one where you have the flaps. So I wish there was a drum roll, and I think this is what a lot of people we should start doing on live streams. Is just crack the seals open on a live stream. I think it'd be kind of fun. Um, Crack it open like a cold brewski. Yeah, enjoying one right now. Oh man, I'm laying off of the IPAs. I'm Amstel Light is becoming my favorite beer because it has body to it, um, like a pilsner, but it doesn't leave the lingering aftertaste, and it's not foamy or anything. So, um, it's raw and simple art. Yeah, it is. It really is. Um, Alaskan Berg Wanderer, 1986. It wouldn't have just been shrink wrap. It would have been in a long box. Yeah, yeah. Well, this one I remember. I remember seeing these, in the clear, the clear one, not the. We're all used to the tall ones that they would have the key that they would unlock it, the security ones, but there were clear plastic things that a lot of CDs came in, back in, late 80s, early 90s when. So I think I remember seeing like a real long box of these, but I also remember seeing a lot of just the plastic container. Um, yeah. My mom was buying CDs way back then. I remember throwing all those boxes away. Yeah, I had a bunch of long boxes too, and oh man. Anyways, we're gonna open this right now. Do I have anything to crack it open? All right. There's a little hole right here. Got the Series 598 for $3.99. Who knows what Series 598 meant? Probably something to do with Series 5. Who the hell knows what that means? It probably flea market. I'm sure it was probably like, I miss those days though, of a good flea market when you'd go in and they would just have racks and racks of CDs and records, and they were cheap, and stuff like that. I'm sure at some point this ended up in a flea market bin somewhere, and that's why it was sold for $3.99. All right. Crack this open right here. Some ASMR right now. sexy sexy shrink wrap unsealing. Should have some e-girl in cosplay, unsealing an OG. Something about just a fat dude in his 40s just doesn't really get the clicks. All right. All right. So it's definitely a very clean jewel case. Let me open it up. So the CD is in there. Now, I wonder. I don't see any fingerprints. How about maybe if we go on Discogs and check it out? You guys ready for that? Let me figure out here how to share my screen. Um, okay, so we're gonna go on Discogs, and as soon as oh wait, present. Here we go. Share screen. Oh crap! I'm on a new computer, so now I need to go in and give everything permission to view everything. Enter my. May not be able to record. I don't need to record the damn contents. I just want to share my screen. All right. Here we go. Perfect. All right. Megadeth. Killing is my business and business is good. So, this is catalog. And I'm telling you, this card this card is flawless. I don't really, I mean, there are those two little dents, but there's the two little dents right here on the edges. So this was probably okay, there's a dent right there, but there are also things that could happen in the factory too. This, I would say, it wasn't factory sealed, but it was resealed a long, long time ago. So it's been sealed for probably 30 some odd years, and that's kind of helped prevent aging of the of it. So this is Combat 88561 CD, which really it's about the Matrix. So 88561, 2. Okay, see, this doesn't. Ooh, okay, that's not what this one looks like. It does say relativity. I wonder if yeah, no, there's not a booklet. It's just there, yeah, there's not a booklet. It's just the card, which I believe back in the day this probably only just had the card. Um let's see here. I could probably just search by the matrix number. Oh God, I just don't have the eyesight for that right now. Um, let's see. Let's look at some other ones. I wonder all these vinyl pressings. Were they doing colored vinyl back then? Because I noticed I like this Dolby stereo. What else was there here? Yeah, cassettes, green camouflage, LP, green camo. Were they doing records? Oh, the inner label. Ooh, that's cool. I like that. That's awesome. Um, and it was black vinyl. Hell yeah. That's all we needed back then. What's this one look like? So it doesn't have. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. So this one doesn't have any liner notes. I always hated when they did that with CDs, when they would just scale down the LP album art and then it's like 2-point font. Um, just judging by 87, maybe repress. Okay, no, this has that. So what else? I can't really look at the we'll go through. Ooh, what's this? Music for Nations double LP. I remember seeing this thing just laying around everywhere. And Netherlands, UK, yeah, $700. That sounds about right. For those Music for Nations pressings. This is probably a later reissue because that's the thing too, is the catalog numbers would stay the same. A lot of times if it had a barcode, so the barcode for this one, interesting, is the same. The barcode is the same as the catalog number, which is a little weird. Well, no, it's not identical, but it's got to be like a later reissue. Club edition. No, because that would say that it was. I was hoping I'd open this and it'd just be some awesome, like, whoa, like stickers and all this cool shit would come out of it, and not the case. It's not a Music for Nations pressing. Japan, no, US. Okay, so God, this can't be. Well, one thing too is who's to say Discogs is is right? I mean, this is like an open community here in a lot of ways. Reissued, remastered, remixed. Oh no, not that. Huh. Well, it looks like I have a little more work to do on to find out which pressing this is, and I don't have my glasses on right now, so I'm not about to try to read the matrix numbers, but I will post that in the comments section later once I do find out. I wonder if maybe if this was a budget, like back when they would have Super Saver, CDs or reissues where or like where they would have the things where they would have two albums on one disc, or something like that. I wonder if maybe if it's something like that, because this is the original album art, and I know how to authenticate print work, and I'm confident that this is from original, that this artwork is reproduced from original art, from the original files, because it does not look like a scan at all. Yeah. So I will do a little more research on this, and I'll post in the comments after I determine what pressing this is. Yeah. All right. Who do we have here? Discogs Wikipedia, not exactly hard. Yeah, exactly. Canadian pressing. Canadian pressing. The thing that's weird is, yeah, I don't know. This is mysterious. I mean, it's difficult. I have a difficult time to believing that the aging that's on that sticker, that this is a bootleg, because bootlegging back then, there weren't CDs being bootlegged back in those days. And the aging on this sticker, especially for $3.99, tells me that this has been sealed for a really long time, but not factory sealed for a really long time. I had that pressing. It was just a card. Yeah. So it's not. It doesn't have. I mean, it has liner notes like, "Thanks to Emily Mustaine." I always thought it was funny when like metal bands, they're so evil and, well, we hate everything, but then they, special thanks go out to mom and dad and sisters and all of our friends. We love you all. I always thought that was funny. Megadeth wishes extra special thanks to BC Rich Guitars and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, I mean the printing, an easy way that you could tell if something is scanned and reprinted is that the text looks a little blurry, and as the details get finer, then they kind of just blur into each other. I don't see that. This all looks like it's reprinted from the original files. So I'm confident that it's an authentic pressing, but it's just maybe a pressing, again, like one of those reissues that was a budget pressing, is, back when they would have the Super Saver sticker on it or something like that. Is it a Russian pressing? I don't know. I don't believe that it's not Russian. I mean, I completely believe it's authentic. I just think that, again, as old as this is, who knows how many other pressings are out there that just are not on Discogs. I mean, I think that's entirely possible too. Just some homework that I need to do. Okay, so, all right, screen share. Another red flag when Discogs listen, I'm not allowed to sell. Yeah. Well, I have one that's not allowed to sell, and it is actually two of them. So I have that ass suck video that I did a while ago on my channel, but I also have two pressings of the discography. And here's the thing, one is authentic and one is a boot. Because Blast as Fuck, which I loved that label, one of my favorite Australian grindcore labels ever, just the best stuff they put out. They did the Ass Suck discography, but it was never officially released because Steve Heritage would not approve of it. So if you were to look on Discogs for the Ass Suck discography, it's going to say it's not allowed to be sold because it's listed as unofficial. It's not a bootleg. It's just not official because Steve Heritage wouldn't approve of it being released. So, and then this is like a South American boot that just came out recently. And the thing that this one's very obviously a boot. Like, it's just things that you can pick out. Anybody who understands how print design works, there are just quite a few things you can pick out in this thing that you could tell it's scanned artwork and stuff like that. But yeah, this is a good one to have because it's, comp tracks. I mean, they're, of course, Misery Index and the Anti-Capital, these are the two albums. Sound Pollution put these out, but this one, just 7 inches and comp tracks and things like that. I have a few other comps that they were out on, but it's nice to just have like everything in one spot for that. But yeah, anyways, so this was Doing God's Work, episode 1.5. I'm going to be doing some more episodes. I hope everyone tunes in. We're going to be debunking some myths about collecting. We're going to be talking about some scams out there. I'm going to go over some bootlegs and how you can scrutinize a bootleg from something that's authentic. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And yeah, Marty is correct. Ass suck. Gods of grind. Absolutely. Oh my God. It's, this is the thing. And I've always said this, a lot of us, it's like our roots in metal are in thrash or death metal or black metal. For me, my roots in extreme metal have always been grindcore. And I'm a grinder, and like with my knowledge of metal, it's like there are gaps where it's like, underground death metal bands, maybe there's a gap where I just this past weekend on a stream, I admitted I was late getting into Sinister. I was late. I'm glad I did. Cross the Sticks is a great album, but I was late getting into them because at that time I wasn't really listening to death metal, and so I got into Sinister late. And but yeah, Ass Suck. Ooh, they just fit that style of grind that I love. Raw, blast beaty. Don't even need a bassist. Anyways, everyone, thank you for tuning in. I had fun tonight talking about shrink wrap, and I hope everyone had a takeaway from this, and that be a skeptic if something is a sealed OG. Be a skeptic. If it's too good to be true, then it is too good to be true. All right. Thanks for tuning in.